So when we talk about the integrated bracelet luxury market, there are of course the three big watches that everybody talks about. The AP Royal Oak, which is probably arguably the most popular. Of course, the Nautilus from Patek Philippe, very popular, also very expensive. Both of these watches are very expensive. And then a watch that has actually been rising in price recently, the Overseas from Vacheron, a watch that I'm actually very fond of. But there are alternatives out there from brands who are sort of lesser known, however, are really big players in the watch game. And today I have a watch that is a very big, sort of a brand that is a very big player in the watch game. And they are a supplier to some amazing brands, including Patek Philippe and AP and other brands like IWC, MB&F, Zenith. We're talking about really awesome brands. A. Lange & Söhne. So you're getting a lot of really good components in a watch that is made by the manufacturer who supplies other brands, and that is Parmigiani. Now, a lot of people know Parmigiani because they do supply other brands, but they do make their own watches, and Parmigiani make some pretty spectacular integrated bracelet watches that have an appeal depending on if you like the look, because it does have a very distinctive look. They aren't for someone who just wants to get an everyday watch, because they aren't that. I think they're a little bit on the sort of outlandish side, in my opinion. But I think that's a good thing if you are in the market for something that's out of the ordinary. So this is the Tondagraph GT. It's a limited edition of 200 pieces. It is an annual calendar, and you can see right off the bat, they do something very different with their annual calendar. Yes, you're getting a large or a big date there at the 12 o'clock, right below the 12 o'clock where it says Parmigiani. The thing is, here it is in orange. They actually put an orange font on the date on this watch, and I love it. I giggle when I say it because it is so cool. I haven't really seen a lot of brands do this. It's not the first time I've seen it, but a brand that is charging what they charge for their watches, I think it's a little bit playful, and I like it a lot. Now, the orange actually is useful also because it says annual calendar there at the bottom. That's in orange, and then you have the month right there. That's in orange as well. So you have the day, the month, and the date. You don't get the day on here, but that's forgivable. Otherwise, I think the dial would be a little bit too cluttered. You do get a textured dial on here. It's not a hobnail pattern, but it's a little bit different. I'll do a close-up of it so you can see. You get applied indices, of course. There's sort of a minute track that is raised above that area that is textured, and then the subdials have sort of a sunray pattern in them. One interesting feature about those subdials, of course, the hands are sort of like little dagger hands. You have dagger hands for the hour and minute as well. It is the seconds hand, so the running seconds hand here at 3 o'clock. It's sort of double-edged, so you have a long and a short portion. And the reason why they did that is because they added the month right below inside of that register, and it just says month, and then it says, well, right now it says January because it is January, and then the small portion of that hand reaches the inner portion of that dial, the actual first 30 seconds, and then the other 30 seconds is reached by the longer portion, so it doesn't obstruct that month calendar. I think it works really well. And I think it looks very good as well. I really like the dial. I like the proportions of this watch. It is really a beautiful watch, and the movement is gorgeous. We'll take a look at the movement in just a minute. But the dial is awesome. We'll go outside of the dial, and then you have this bezel. Now, the bezel alone has two different features to it. So it's sort of a polished bezel. There is a step to it. So it's polished on the inside, closest to the sapphire crystal. Sapphire crystal, by the way, is slightly domed with tons of AR coating. And you do get that blue effect when you move it around, but I think it looks really good. I like that blue effect, and I think it looks really just special. And you can see in my studio lights, usually you would be able to see the camera, which is sitting literally right above the watch, and that's how I sort of make my hands-down videos. And you do not see that reflection. Some watches you could see the full reflection of the camera, and you cannot see it. So it's a very good AR coating. But I was saying about the bezel, there's a step. So you have that polish that's down the down sort of the center of the bezel, and then you have a coin edge that goes all the way around that. Now, I don't see a lot of watches doing this recently, even dress watches, and I like that coined edge. It sort of gives me a little bit of a Breguet vibe. I love a coined edge bezel. I think they look great. One of the features that I've always liked about Parmigiani, and I think it's something that is really either you love it or you hate it, is their sort of teardrop lugs. And this sort of calls back to a lot of the partnerships that they originally did with Bugatti. I think that this actually came from that original partnership. So they made some really awesome, very high-end watches, sort of showcasing their abilities, their manufacture in these Bugatti watches that they actually teamed up with Bugatti, and they made some pretty amazing watches. And I believe this was sort of a result of that partnership, because vintage Bugattis had these huge sort of scooped fenders, and they sort of looked like this teardrop look to it, and it almost mimicked the car, and that's what the point of those sort of lugs were, and I think it looks really good. And I'm glad that they kept that, because they have updated this watch, the Tonda, over time, and they've actually updated the bracelet, the way that the bracelet actually integrates into the case. This is actually fixed, so it looks like this is something that you can remove and you can use a regular strap. You can't. This part of the lug is actually fixed. So some people will not be happy about that, because you will only be able to use their straps, because it is obviously a proprietary lug system. There is no quick release on here to actually change it to the rubber strap. So I think that would be my first complaint, because many manufacturers have moved over to that, including Vacheron, and I believe AP now have a system where you could just, clip it off and then put on a rubber strap, put on the leather strap. But the bracelet is beautiful. It's a combination of sort of a bead blasting and brushing and polishing. So you're getting all three on this bracelet, and there's sort of a line of polish that goes down the side of the case of the bracelet, on the side of the bracelet and on the top of the bracelet. Then you have brushing. Then you have alternating brushing and bead blasting. Polishing and bead blasting that goes down the center of the bracelet. So very nice, and the bracelet tapers a lot, as you can see, adding to the elegance, I think, but it could taper a little bit more. I would have liked that, but I think it works very nice as it is, and you get screwed links in here, which is obviously expected at this price range. The star of the show, really, though, is the movement. The movement on here is an incredible movement. I have always loved the finishing on Vaucher movements, which is Parmigiani's manufacturer. This gets a 22 karat gold rotor. It is obviously an annual calendar, and I believe the name of this movement is the PF043, which is, I guess, the designation for their annual calendar movement and chronograph movement, obviously, as well. Just a beautiful movement. I'll do close-ups of it so you can see. I really love how they do the Cote de Genève that sort of spirals out from the center, radiates out from the center of the movement. That's slightly off-center, which is kind of cool. And it just gets wider as it gets closer to the edge of the actual movement. Really looks beautiful. They do a great job, and that 22 karat gold rotor is, carved out. It looks really good. It's sort of skeletonized. I just like these movements. I think they look good, and they're actually reliable. They've been around for a long time. Many manufacturers have used these movements. As I said, MB&F use them. I believe Girard-Perregaux do not, but they use their cases. Bulgari use their movements, and Richard Mille use their movements. So, I mean, they can't be, lousy movements. Actually, I believe that Bulgari and I want to say Hermes now use their movements exclusively, because I think they are part of the same group. Actually, Bulgari is separate. I think they use their movements because they buy them, but I believe that Hermes actually exclusively uses Vaucher movements now, because they are in the same group, which is pretty cool. Anyway, the only other thing I would say here that I would probably ask for on this watch, especially considering the price. So the price is around $19,000, which is a lot of money, I understand. Micro adjust in the bracelet, something that is on the fly, even if it's a butterfly movement, because I'll show you the watch that I have on my wrist. Today I have my Vacheron. This is my Vacheron Overseas World Timer. I mean, just to give you an idea, this is a $36,000 watch. currently selling, if you want to buy it, for around $45,000, I want to say, because they are going over list price. This is something that you can walk into Parmigiani and buy for the asking price, for $19,000. Who knows? You may be able to get even a better price on it. I don't know, but that's what they are asking for, and that's what you can buy them for. This, if you go into Vaucher, they will tell you they don't have them. You do get quick release on the bracelet, which is right there. As you can see, there's just a little tab there that you can pull, and then you get micro adjust in the bracelet, and it's really on the fly. You really do have it on both sides, and you can get basically 2 millimeters on either side. So basically 4 millimeters of adjustment in a bracelet that is actually a double deployant, which is great. And then we have the Royal Oak, another competitor, sort of a watch that this watch is looking to sort of replace in your collection if you cannot get one of these. This is the diver, but they make the chronograph. The chronograph versions go for well above retail, pretty much double retail. Even the Vaucher, the chronographs are going for well above retail now, which is kind of sad because they're almost impossible to get. And like I said, you can get this watch. So if you want a watch and you want something that's really high end, you can still get it. And you can still walk in and pay retail, which is awesome. So there you go. There it is on my 7.5 inch wrist. I actually have not done measurements yet, so let me do that really quickly. But you can see on my 7.5 inch wrist, this is like a 42 millimeter watch, I believe, is what I measured it at. But I'll do the measurements in just a second. 42 millimeters. And then the lug to lug is big on here because you do get like sort of an effective lug to lug because you have male end links. And that's really it. I mean, it's not an incredibly thick watch. Let's do thickness and measurements of the case itself. There is no lume on here. That's the other thing I would say that should be addressed. So 41.7 is basically what it is at the bezel in the case. It might be a little bit smaller than that at the case, but it's actually hard to measure. And then 13.7 millimeters, you get 100 meters of water resistance. You do have a screwed in case back, screwed in crown. On the thicker side, but it is a chronograph and it has an annual calendar, so it's actually a complicated watch. And it's integrated, so it does wear larger. 52.4 millimeters, and the crown on here is a nicely sized 7 millimeters. So again, it is thicker. It's on the thicker side. It does look thin on my wrist, so I actually never measured the thickness, but you can see it does sit really nicely on my wrist. Pretty thin, or looks pretty thin, and there you go. Awesome watch. 41.6 millimeters, as I mentioned, a little bit smaller at the actual case itself, but just a beautiful watch, really well executed. Like I said, no lume, because there is no lume on here, so no lume shot. And this has to go back to the manufacturer. It has to go back to Parmigiani. I'm going to really miss this watch. I have worn it as much as I can while I had it in my possession. I will be sending it back, and it will be very missed. And honestly, this has sort of sparked a big interest for this brand in my collection, to get one into my collection. I have always had them on the radar, but I never really got to have a long-term sort of look at one, and this is beautiful. It really is beautiful. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear what you guys think of this watch. What do you think of the whole entire genre? I think it's pretty cool that they are, actually making parts like cases and dials and movements for very high-end brands, and they make their own watch. So I'm sure that they're going to be putting everything they can, that is, the best or top-notch into their watches. Some people do not like the Parmigiani look or the Parmigiani name. I completely understand that. If you're one of those people, tell me down below in the comments as well. I want to hear from you guys. Anyway, thank you for logging on. I will catch you guys in the next video.